Hey guys, before we get into today's episode of Button Mash, I just want to say that there was a small issue with the video recording today, and as a result, this is going to be more of an audio cast, but from the metrics I see, that's how most of you people listen to it. I just want to let you know that this was actually an original video call, and we just had some issues with the file, and we could not recover the data. I apologize, we will do better on the next episode, but please do sit and do enjoy Benjamin Chan and all of the knowledge he has to bring to this episode of Button Mash. Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of Button Mash, episode 12. My name is Arif, and in this episode today, we are talking to Benjamin Chan, an principal executive consultant, and a very unique career path which he has taken. He's much like myself, where he has gone through a number of different things in his career lifespan to get to where he is today, and I'm hoping today that you guys will get a lot of good information out of Mr. Benjamin. So how are you doing, sir?
Good, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, man. How's COVID been treating you?
Relatively well. I've worked from home before, and so the transition back to home has been fairly seamless for all intents and purposes. Actually kind of enjoy it. Have a lot less travel time in and out of downtown, but certainly had to go and get my desk and everything all set up properly to work from home.
Oh yeah, no, I bet. Have you been? One thing I've known from a lot of people in the U.S. actually with the whole COVID thing was the ISPs were just not ready for this, for this influx of traffic.
Yeah, and I think TELUS and Shaw and those ones in Canada, they had a lot of setup to be able to do that, and I'd say a lot of other companies inside of Calgary surprisingly were, I'd say, a little bit more than prepared to be able to handle it.
Yeah, I feel that way too, because my ISP never wavered once during the height of the pandemic, back in March. Never went down one time. I was so happy that the transition from that side was so smooth.
Great.
But enough about that. I want to talk about your career path. So why don't you give us a rundown of your background, and let's see what you've got.
Sure. So for myself, I graduated with a computer engineering degree from University of Calgary. And I'd have to say a lot of my early career was spent checking off all the boxes of what I didn't like. So coming out with computer engineering, the expectation is, well, now you should probably be a developer. So spent a lot of time jumping between various startups as a web application developer. And I think at some point I just felt like I couldn't keep up with a lot of the other new languages coming in, keeping that skill set completely up to date as well. You know, when I came into the industry, it was when the tech bubble had just burst, and a lot of those companies were just saying, well, we don't want to have any developers anymore. Instead, we're going to go and outsource. And so that belief at the time was that, you know, if we send it over to India, they can do it for faster, cheaper, and better than the people locally. And so that really got me thinking into, well, what else can I do? What other value can I add to these organizations instead? And, you know, with this nature of startups, what I found is that you get involved in a lot of things outside of your own box, just because they're short on resources and you want to try and expand the skill sets of the people in the organization. And so I ended up doing things around like search engine optimization, being kind of the technical guy, implementing marketing programs and whatnot. And that really exposed me to more the business side of things of, well, these are how you expose a company to more things. Here's how you go and get other consumers to buy into your product. And I then transitioned into Deloitte as a technology integration consultant. If you ask me what that is, my answer is I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah. Many of those like three name titles
Yeah.
are very nebulous.
Yeah, you have something to do with technology and something to do with integration, and that's where I think I found, you know, I really like that consultant lifestyle of being able to look at different challenges for different clients and helping them do it. But for myself, I'd say the fit probably wasn't the best, and went out and partnered with another individual that had left the company. And we just started doing a lot of these other projects in both the fintech space, oil and gas, a lot of various different industries, along with various different departments. So everything from, manager, director levels, all the way up to C-suite level, delivering and executing on strategy and projects for them. And probably end of last year was when I made my big transition and just said, I'm wanted to kind of just branch out by myself, and a little bit of a self-discovery exercise as well of, what else can I do to be able to go and add value, and doing it in my own way. And so Here we are today. Yeah.
Now, one thing I love to ask about whenever I talk to any kind of consultants is the clientele base, because when you're a consultant, you are self-employed, you are your own marketing team in effect.
Yeah.
You are your own sales team. You have to do everything by yourself. You are a one-man show when you first start out normally. Most people don't start off with like 3 other consultants by their side. Like it's normally just you, yourself, and I.
Yeah.
So how have you found that, especially with the economic downturn that we've seen from both COVID and because you're in Alberta, we've seen the oil bubble. I don't want to say burst, but man, that thing is getting poked so hard.
Yeah,
like that thing looks like it's on the verge of burst.
Well, there's definitely agendas from different aspects that are pressuring the environment, right? And to your point, I don't think I would have gone out by myself if I didn't have a ready to go network to be able to access. And when we talk about the industries and such, I mean, I've worked with government, again, oil and gas, technology, startups, fintech, credit unions. There's just so many different areas that I branched into. And even within departments, I did supply chain, there's cybersecurity, there's strategic planning. And I guess for myself, it's even hard to define myself because everything has been so broad. And I've worked very much as a generalist, where I'm not like, hey, I am the blockchain expert inside of oil and gas industry, right? Mm-hmm. It's been very hard to define myself in that way. And so what guidance has been given to me is, well, Ben, you better go and find out what that is.
Okay.
And at the same time, my initial inclination is, well, I don't really want to do that because I find there's a lot of value in terms of cross-pollination of industries and how you approach things. And a lot of where the oil and gas industry has, in their applications, when they're recruiting and such, have looked at it and said, well, you know what? We really want a guy with very deep oil and gas experience to do cybersecurity. And my question would be, why? How did some of these things apply? And I think where I add value is around strategy execution and bridging that gap between what you have on paper, where you're provided a great deck by the Big Four that says, here's what you need to do within the 5 years, and helping them actually deliver that. And so even when we talk about from a project delivery or strategy delivery perspective, is how do you translate those elements off of that PowerPoint slide into actual usable elements that you realize benefits from, right?
Okay.
And even that is like working with its people and getting them empowered so that they're not just like, well, hey, the project's done, we're going to get thrown the information over the fence, right? And hopefully it'll do what it's supposed to do. It's elevating even the people on the team to upgrade their skills, upgrade how they interface with people, upgrade how they collaborate with others, see other ways of doing things that are beyond just, we'll say the PMI, PMP way of doing things, which is a great framework, but how do you apply that framework appropriately? I like to say that designations don't necessarily mean that you're good at what you do. They provide a very great base level of knowledge to say, yeah, I can understand what you're saying. But that doesn't necessarily, a CA designation doesn't mean you're a great accountant. A PN doesn't mean you're a great engineer, right?
Value. I've never put value in designations.
Yeah.
Like just never. They tell me, having come from a medical background, and having gone to school with the people who are now taking care of other people, I put zero value in any designation anywhere I go. Like, I've seen people with 1 letter, 2 letters, 8 letters behind their names, and it's just like, literally means less than nothing.
Yeah.
Like, part of me just wants to tell you that if you can get a refund on those, just try and see what you can get back. Like,
well, you're paying for those letters, right? So
like, I have a lot of letters behind my name.
Yeah.
In fact, that list is still growing. I still have 9 more letters to go.
Yeah.
Behind my name. And I recognize how little value that adds, but at the same time, I'm doing it for a different purpose.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I see that, like, I'm white belt Sigma 6, I only got that because it was free.
Yeah.
Like, there was no way I was paying for that. I'm lean certified, got that for free, no way I was paying for that. Like, you know, there's a lot of things I see from people who are designated for particular tasks who are just so bad at their job. And like, it's just one of those things when I see it, it's just like, as a professional, I see more stock being given to them than I think what's rightfully deserved. But that's a tangential point. That's very easy to get me onto. Because I see the cost and I see the use and I don't see both.
It is, and I think to an extent it's more around how that individual applies that knowledge, which is always kind of the important point. And a lot of the designations do have, you know, an experience component, but it's to help check off the boxes that you understand the base knowledge. And I think for me, it's great to know someone has that base knowledge, but then it's how do they apply it? How do they use it in the right way to actually get something done, which might be a little bit different if someone doesn't have that, we'll say dictionary, and I have to spend time explaining that dictionary, right?
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Mm-hmm. Now, getting back to your incredibly vast client pool, which seems to run the entire gamut of like every sector that Calgary has. How would you, as a consultant, obtain a lot of this? Now, is it like more of, I know it's all networking, but do you have like slide decks that you send out? Is it what you know but who you know? Is it one of those kind of deals? Like, when you're spread out so wide,
right,
and to get in with so many large companies, because once again, as a consultant, these are always like the things that you have to consider when you're going to make this leap into being on your own kind of deal. Mm-hmm. Is how are you going to float yourself?
Absolutely.
And especially with you working with like such high level director, VP, C-suite people, like how do you even get your foot through the door on something like that?
And I'd say that is a huge hurdle if you're a new consultant trying to come into it to break that. A lot of my contacts have come through other personal relationships or through past work that I've been able to go and deliver, that they've been able to go and see what I've done, and having them relay their thoughts and references over into another potential client, or leveraging my personal network that I can say, oh, hey, do you mind introducing me to this person? Because I think there's something of value there. And this is where I think it's a very difficult area to get into. And I actually don't like using the word networking, and I apologize for using it earlier. But hey, I actually view it more as relationship building. So if you were to ever go and say, hey, networking is you go to someone, you hand out a card, and then you follow up 3 days, and they'll be able to be a contact for you that you'll be able to get a job from. I would say, no, that will never, ever work, because you're viewing it as a transactional piece. Instead, I view it more as you have to build that relationship. You have to build that trust into what they do. And I'll be very frank on this. I have trouble with hiring people or bringing people into other jobs, subcontracting, whatever it might be, if I don't understand the past work that they've done, because I don't have a level of trust necessarily on all of their pieces. And for me, like resumes and things like that are very they're on paper. People can make them sound as nice as they want, and same thing as an interview. But where it really hits the pavement is when you do case studies or demonstrate your skills in time management, communication. All of those pieces are what reflect whether you're going to be able to do a very high caliber value work. And
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, and so I think a lot of it is like, well, right now I find it's very hard to network or relationship build because there is that stress to say, well, I need to try and connect with people as much as I can. But if I'm referring someone says, hey, can you refer me? I find it very hard to go and pass it on to them if that's going to be a reflection on the on the people that I keep in touch with. What if that goes sour? That's my reputation at stake. And so I almost feel as like, well, instead of me just passing you on, I need to get to know you more as a person.
Right.
I need to get to know all these things I'm not just going to say, hey, here's all the LinkedIn contacts, just have at it and tell me which CEOs you want, which VPs, which managers, and I'll just send you the list. I would be more like, great, I'm glad you want a reference. Let's go and have a conversation for an hour and let me find out more about you first.
Absolutely. Now, you touched on something extremely interesting. My apologies. Somebody's blowing me up. Sorry, 1 second. Let me just turn that off. You know, it's weird. I don't get anything throughout the whole day. Like, my phone never rings. I'm an online person, and then, of course, the minute we're recording, we have that. You touched on something a few minutes ago, and it's incredibly interesting what you said. You said you would ask someone to introduce you. Right. This is something. This is one of those things that we suck as a species, is always being able to leverage that content, whether it's to meet a significant other or to meet a business contact.
Yeah.
Asking somebody who has that portal already open, who has that gateway accessible, and asking them to help lead you through it. Do you find that to be harder than any of the other methods that you just listed down for meeting new clients, or is that one of those things that you just kind of get more comfortable with over time?
I think it's a comfort over time piece, as well as trying to get over some of the psychological hurdles that you might run into, right? Of, well, if I go and ask them, then maybe I owe them something. Or what if I'm not confident in myself to actually reach out and things like that? And I feel like sometimes it's, put yourself out there and see what happens. And I feel like if you're doing it in a respectful manner, then the only repercussion that could actually happen is a polite no. And that's okay.
Yes, but we're not talking about Tinder, though. We're talking about going into business.
No, but that's where when I leverage my contacts, it's more so from people that already know the caliber of work that I've delivered.
Yes.
That we already have an inherent trust that even if they were to go and pass myself on to their next client or a potential reference, right? That they don't feel there's any risk to their reputation.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And one thing I've always stressed to anyone, whether they're just starting a career, whether they're trying to branch out into a new field, is projects are what will carry you.
Absolutely.
All the designations in the world, like I said, they don't mean anything. But projects, like having just completed my comp sci degree, I've already had other friends who completed at the same time, and they're all building out their project portfolios now. Mm-hmm. They're all building out accessible products, minimum viable products for sale. Like, they're moving all the way in those directions, because one thing they did learn that they never heeded the advice, like in hindsight, like I was trying to tell them earlier, but they learned it after, was projects in tangible things carry you in this world.
Absolutely.
People don't care how many books you read. They just don't. People care about what you can do, how fast you can do it, and on what budget. Mm-hmm. And they care about making sure that the work is quality grade. Quality enough to be pushed out the door one way or the other.
Absolutely.
And it's one of those things that you're right. In terms of having to get to know people, you need to see the quality of their work. How good are they at their job? Because on paper, I can tell you I've seen a dozen resumes. These people are 21 and they sound like programming gods.
Yep.
But I can tell you right now, I looked into a lot of them, barely made it through their first 2 assignments.
Yep.
But on paper, anyone can sound the way they want. I can tell you I know 8 languages. Until you ask me to show you them, I don't have to back any of that up.
If any of the 2 are Elven and Klingon, depending on the context, I'd either hire you or fire you.
Right? Exactly. No, that's very, very interesting, though. One thing I really do love about your particular role versus like some of the other guests we've had on the show is the fact that you are interfacing so tightly with this level of corporations that it's just a completely you're looking through a completely different lens than some of the other guests that we've had here, because like they're working with organizations as a whole, but you're working with like a lot of just individual lenses that are attached to a scope,
right?
But where you are, it's just so focused.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the profession as well, is that I'm brought in to solve a problem. I'm not here to just fill a role and work through all of the political things that and personal agendas of people of like, well, if I finish this project, I'll be able to maybe get a promotion or get that bonus and whatnot. All of that to me, it just drives noise inside of it. And where I find satisfaction is saying, I have a problem. I don't know how to fix it. Come in and help me fix it. And that's your agenda. That's it.
Right.
I'm not here to go and necessarily please the manager in HR on a technology component that has nothing to do with their department or anything like that, right? It becomes very laser focused to be able to say, well, how can I do that in the best manner? And from there, it still starts to go and branch out into a lot of different areas that might slightly be outside of that scope, but they're all in the interest of helping to go and solve the problem. And
that's very, very
and for me as an engineer, I just, my brain is just built that way. I'm trying to figure out, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? And what I love doing as well is also helping to upgrade and coach some of the leadership, either within the team or even outside of the team, as just the stakeholders or other managers and directors involved with it, to highlight other areas where I'm kind of like, hey, there's some areas here that you might want to go and help sustain a little bit further, or really be able to go and show the potential of other teams that may not have been shown before.
Right. No, that's very, very cool. Now, one thing I always like to have the guests do is I like to ask them, for people starting out, this is especially for people starting out, but even for people making the transition who want to jump fields, altogether fields, like how you did, how I did, who want to jump. What are 5 top tips, and like 5 best pieces of advice and 5 worst pieces of advice to like avoid that you would say for somebody moving into this field?
So I'd say the first tip would be figure out how you learn. Figure out if you can figure things out very quickly. Is it visual? Is it audio? What makes you learn something very quickly? Because when you jump into any kind of consulting assignment, the ramp up time is extremely fast. I'll always walk into the room saying, hey, I'm the dumbest guy in the room here, even though I know I've been brought in to solve the problem. I need your guys' help as the subject matter experts to impart on me enough knowledge that I can help you. And so I don't necessarily have a detailed knowledge of how all of the supply chain works, but you know, in past cases I've been brought in, we need to go and get our supply chain division ready for this huge capital project. And I'm like, I don't know how it works, but I need to learn as quickly as possible from all the different people how all of those things intermingle. And so if I know how I learn, then I need to go and quickly be able to go and pick all that information up and get it into my brain so I can actually have it pushed out into tactics.
Okay.
The next piece I would say related to that is adaptability and being able to handle change at a very high rate. Because along with the learning, as you may have one way, but you might need to go and amp up other ways to go and learn because some of the ones might not be available. If you are always a face-to-face person and you needed to go and sit down with someone to do an interview in order to learn, well, COVID hit. Sorry. You got to find a different way, right? And even with that is just projects and things can turn on a dime. You look at all of the change going on in the world right now, whether it be political or medical things, right? You have to be able to go and understand how you want to go and adapt to that very quickly and execute on those things.
Okay.
And I think the third piece would be understand where your strengths are and what you want to do. And I'm not looking specifically for like your industry or anything like that, but what do you like to do? For me, I would say, project execution and delivery is what I love doing. But there's other people who might be great writers. They're great at writing industry reports or putting in persuasive arguments onto paper, slide development, things like that. Know what it is that drives the value. Because if you can't figure that out, you won't be able to deliver any value to the client.
Okay.
And fourth, I'd say, well, don't be afraid to push your boundaries a little bit. Don't be afraid to be a little bit uncomfortable. And sometimes it'll be just a little bit past the shallow end, and other times it'll be right into the deep end. But leveraging adaptability and learning and things like that is how being comfortable with that unknown piece of it and that discomfort of, well, I don't exactly know how to solve it, but I got to figure it out. Right. I remember my first project coming out. The first project coming out as kind of, an independent consultant. They told me, well, we want you to deliver this for one FI first, and then we want you to deliver it across the country. I sweat a little bit thinking about that. Just like the sheer scale of it. One is just doing it for an entire FI, not even just a department or anything, and then doing a technology piece that spans the entire country. It's kind of like, okay, wow, I'm not so sure about that. And getting comfortable with that is hard, but that's the only way you're going to be able to build more experience and continue to upgrade your skills, right? If you're always going to continue doing the same thing, then I would say that you probably shouldn't be a consultant. You should probably find a job that does the same thing over and over. Maybe it's a month-end processing, maybe it's revenue, I don't know. But that's probably something that suits you more if you're not willing to go and dive into the unknown.
Right. No, for sure.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And what would be 5 pitfalls you tell people to avoid? And do not just give the same list that you just listed in reverse.
Backwards. Yeah, I'll just take the
that.
Bizarro view of everything I just said before. No, I would say that even if you're not in a consulting role inside of an organization, is really understanding the role you're in now and how it fits into the big picture. And also if you're just coming out and it's like, hey, this is my first job doing it, don't look at it as your forever job. These things are always stepping stones into something greater. And it's not like the knowledge that you have is absolutely useless, right? There's going to be things that you can take from it, whether it be strict technical knowledge or even the soft skills that you learned from it, right? So, if, you're into medicine and things like that, maybe you don't need to know how all the muscles and things work, but there's probably a few things you might have learned from communication on, bedside manner and things like that, which can probably be very useful in other situations. So don't view a job as being that black hole of death that you won't ever be able to go and escape. That it's that forever piece. The other analogy I like to make is, someone working at McDonald's. If you look back, let's say 100 years, having a meal out in less than 2 minutes is absolutely mind-blowing compared to what we have, right? To what we have now. And so even the guy flipping the burger, there's a whole lot of pieces that had to come into play from both a food management perspective, the supply chain, all of those pieces, and you are doing your part in it to keep the gears going. And I don't necessarily want to think yourself as a gear, but there is a larger picture of how everything comes together, right?
Look, one thing, all my shows, whether it be Button Mash, Daily Chat, or even Let's Talk, one thing we don't do is we don't blind out reality.
Right.
Look, some people are just a cog in the wheel. Some people are just a spoke in the wheel. That's just how the system is built.
They are replaceable.
The system is built that way.
Yeah. It is built that way, but I guess what I'd say is see how the cog fits into the entire machine. It gives a little bit of a better appreciation of why that cog is in place and how it actually functions. And so it's
understand your
even
place,
from
but at
tactical
some point,
to strategic. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Understand like your cog in the system.
Yeah.
But don't ever get it mistaken that you're just not a cog.
Yeah.
Like the thing about a cog is they are easily replaceable. And that is at that level what those kind of jobs are. They're cog jobs.
Right.
Like you swap them in, you swap them out. Like that's just what happens.
But you'll still have to swap something in to be able to go.
You swap something in
to make it work.
But how that relates to this kind of thing is because being a consultant is not a cog job per se. Mm-hmm. Like you are very much brought in to solve problems. Like you are specifically requested to do things. Whereas, like you're not just day-to-day operations. You are very much project and systems assistance.
Absolutely.
In a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like in that way, I would always say people to like, yes, understand your place on both sides of the field.
Absolutely. Like
you need to know where you land, because when you treat a job like consulting, like a cog job, you're going to be real shocked when that contract's not renewed after the project's over.
Yeah.
Like you're going to get the shock of your life. So it's one of those kind of things that that's why I don't ever try and hide reality. I try and make sure it's always at the forefront, because it's one of those things that I take that approach because I used to be that approach, where I took jobs in the wrong capacities and they were mistakes on my part.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those learning experiences, but it's one of those learning experiences I take forward to teach everyone else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I'd say that perception of, I guess, don't view it any job as just being completely lost. Again, just see how it all fits together, because that perspective, that little bit wider lens, gives you an idea of where your next stepping stone might be.
Right. Yeah. So when you made the transition, I'm going to jump a little bit back here to the start of the show. When you made the transition from comp sci, we're just going to call it comp sci just for the sake of scoping. When you made the transition from comp sci to straight business, did you feel like you had to go back and get any more education to like be able to be like super successful in your role? Did you just roll with what you had and just learned on the fly?
It's an interesting question, because I think for me it was more learning on the fly. And I say that only because with the background of, let's say, comp sci or computer engineering, is that you're taught already a lot of the math and technical skills. And when you go into the business side, it's a lot easier to learn a lot of those other concepts and how you want to go and apply them. Whereas I think if I were to go from business and I said, hey, maybe I graduate with like an accounting major or something like that, or finance, and said, you know what, I want to go into development. That is a lot harder switch than the other way around.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. One's jumping high to low. The other's going low to high.
Right. Exactly. And
so unless you're Michael Jordan, you're not making it.
Yeah. And even then, I want to say that what I've noticed is a lot different way in terms of just how teams work. So when I went through engineering school, it was basically like, the whole thing of look to your left, look to your right. One of you guys are probably going to be gone, maybe both of them, right?
The both of them is always what gets me.
Yeah. Look to the left, look to the right. One of these guys, choose one. Okay, now choose the other. It's like, oh, no. There's no one else beside me. Then you're screwed. but there was very much a camaraderie around being able to work together to be able to get something done, because you're always under that threat of like, we're all suffering together. So how do we work together on different projects to be able to get things done? And when I looked at how the business schools work, they're very much like, how can I get the best grade? I don't want to go and share my answers or give them any hints as to how it gets done, because then they could be better than me, and I need to make sure that I'm on the top of the class, right?
Right.
And so even that dynamic of shifting from that technical engineering side to business was a bit of a shift, but I think it's actually helped in terms of how I work with teams and be able to go and get them to do things more effectively.
Okay. Yeah, I do see a lot of engineers, and I feel like that program, like all the engineering programs, civil, mechanical, computer, I really, from what I've been able to observe, it feels like they teach a lot of camaraderie in that, in the same way like a sport teaches camaraderie with other people, like how to work well in a team, how to be able to ask for help from someone else.
Right.
Without denigrating yourself.
Yeah, and I'd say in my experience, there's no ego there in asking for help, and that's one of the neat things.
That's one thing a lot of people seem to have trouble with.
Yeah.
Is they don't like to. People don't like to ask for help. In my experience, they don't like to ask for help. Period.
Yeah.
But they definitely don't want to ask for help from somebody lower on the pole than them.
Yeah. Well.
So like I was doing an internship. I could tell like when some people had to ask me like programming questions because the APIs were not. Cisco was a tire fire of a company, and their whole integration system is just a mess. So when we were trying to like do things and like we had to go like parse through the code, a lot of them didn't have coding experience. So it was like I could see they would come and readily ask, but you could also see in the body language it was a little bit weird on their side to ask the intern about how to do something.
Yeah.
When they've been there for 6 years. Like you could see it in the body language. It was very subtle, but it was there.
Yeah, for sure.
But never be afraid to ask for help though. Help is one of those things of one thing you'll learn in computers is they're too complex. They're just way too complex for any one person to know every single facet. There's no way. You would spend your whole life learning about every individual component and part. This is why we have companies like MSI that employ like thousands of people to get this one job done of making graphics card.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it all yourself. And asking for help is very much one of those stones that when you're able to, you can understand that you don't have to take on a burden of such a monolithic size. If that makes any sense. But yeah, like asking for help is just one of those things that people just have to get over.
Yeah, and I think engineering school for me was one of those things that helped jump over those hurdles a little bit faster, because you look left and you look right and you go, no, we all want to get through. I know they said look left and look right and two are going to be gone. No, we are all going to get through it.
Right.
Yeah.
Nope, that's fair. And they didn't tell that to us in chiropractic school, but there was definitely this air about like, look, most of you are going to make it through the first trimester. We'll see you in the second.
Yeah.
Whoever's left. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, it was a much more ominous way of saying, look left, look right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great that you have been able to parlay your engineering and your computer science skills into a business focus without a lot of big hurdles. Like, would I be right in that assumption?
I think
like you were
so.
able to adapt more readily to it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of it also is just understanding how the technology applies to the business. There's the functional pieces and technical pieces around, well, when I click this button, it's going to send a message over to that database, which triggers a stored procedure and stuff like that. The business doesn't care.
Yeah,
they just need to be able to understand if I click this button, it will spit out the right report for me. And
right.
And sometimes I'll say the technical people will get those blinders on and because it's their passion, right? And I don't fault them for that. But the communication of those pieces into other areas sometimes gets lost. And so being able to elevate that language a little bit, I think, is something that's going to be very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I think we are going to call it there. So I want to really thank you for coming on to the show today.
No, thank you very much.
Being my guest. So thank you so much. If there's any social media plugs or anything you want to shout out, by all means, go for it.
Sure. I have a website, www.climbconsulting.ca, where people can find me there and find out a little bit more about what I do. Thanks.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Check out his website. Links are in the description box down below. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see all of you on the next episode of Button Mash. Have a good day, guys. Bye.